controlled demolition expert. They show him the collapse of this building. They don't tell him when it happened. And he says, oh, that's a controlled demolition. A team of experts did this. It starts from below. They've simply blown away the columns. It's professional work, without a doubt. Now, he's the top European controlled demolition expert. Does anybody here know Danny Joinko personally? We've invited him here. He's getting a lot of pressure, unfortunately. He still stands by his opinion that this is a controlled demolition. But these people who are experts in controlled demolitions and bring these buildings down, they work for federal governments. They work for the richest people who own these big buildings. And they're not in a position to come out here and join me on stage and tell you this is a controlled demolition. Neither is the World Trade Center structural engineer himself, Leslie Robertson. So we would like to be joined by several of these people, in addition to the high-rise architects that we do have signed on to our petition at AE911 Truth, and 60 structural engineers like Kamal Obeid, who says a localized failure in a steel frame building like World Trade Center 7 cannot cause a catastrophic collapse like a house of cards without a simultaneous and pattern loss of several of its columns at key locations within the building. Can fire do that? No. And of course he's referring to explosives. And those explosives take time to plant and engineer in the building. So we would have or expect to have foreknowledge of them. Let's see if we have any. Here are mysterious construction workers who were in World Trade Center 7, walking away from World Trade Center 7, looking at the camera, the CNN camera, turning around after hearing an explosion, and looking back into the camera and saying, did you hear that? Keep your eye on that building, it's coming down. Keep your eye on that building, it's coming down. All right, guys. Now, how do these guys know that the building is about to blow up? Now, fires don't announce that the building is about to blow up, especially those fires. Speaking of which, this gentleman who was talking about explosions, before that, well, everybody was moved back 6 or 7 blocks or so away from World Trade Center 7, and he's listening to a radio held in the hand of a Red Cross worker. What does he do?
At the last few seconds, he took his hand off and he heard 3, 2, 1.
Do fires bring buildings down to countdowns? I don't think so. Something else is going on here. And it gets more interesting. The BBC announced the collapse of this building 20 minutes before it happened. That's really good reporting. That's where you want to be. They apologize for this error, citing the confusing events of the day. Does this make them psychic? What's going on here? Right? We're beginning to get better than that, though. In America, we have CNN. They announced the collapse of this building at 11:07.
In New York, Alan Frank joins us on the phone in Lower Manhattan. Alan?
And just 2 or 3 minutes ago, there was yet another collapse or explosion. I'm now out of sight. A Good Samaritan's taken me in on Blaine Street. But at 11:15, there was another collapse or explosion following the 10:30 collapse of the second tower. And a firefighter who rushed by estimated that 50 stories went down. The street filled with smoke. It's like a forest fire roaring down a canyon. Now, as I think Patty Sackett and others have told you, all of Manhattan is covered, downtown Manhattan is covered with thick white ash and building material.
A 50-story building went down. There was no other 50-story building that went down besides World Trade Center 7, 47-story building. The Twin Towers had gone down just earlier. So how can they be announcing the collapse of this building when it hadn't happened? It didn't happen until 5:20. Was it supposed to go down at 10:30? or 1045. Had it gone down at that time, we wouldn't even have those incredible videos of it going down. It would have been completely obstructed by the view, obstructed by these incredible smoke and dust clouds from the World Trade Center Twin Towers, which had just gone down 15 minutes and a half an hour earlier. So some people think that this building was a dud. It was supposed to go off at that time, and that's why there's all these rumors in the street of the buildings coming down. They're waiting for it to come down. There's a whole lot of evidence for this. And the official reason that they wouldn't let the firefighters go up and fight those fires in there is that it had structural damage, and they were afraid of it collapsing. Real interesting. Well, so we believe we have evidence so far in these first 8 characteristic features. We'll get to the evidence of explosives in the debris pile when we talk about the World Trade Center towers. But this is all direct evidence of explosive destruction, and fire can't create any one of these, let alone all 8 of them. So with additional corroborating or circumstantial evidence, is this proof to you of controlled demolition? Let me just ask, I asked you before about the Twin Towers. Relative to Building 7, how many believe that and be honest with me, really, the World Trade Center 7 came down, according to the official story, normal office fires. Raise your hand real high. Anybody? This is the official U.S. given reason, cause for this collapse. Is anybody still unsure? Maybe you're still unsure. Okay. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Anybody else? 3. How many of you think this building was brought down by explosive demolition? Oh, God. We have a problem, don't we? What's our problem? Well, let's look at, see who was in this building. We have the CIA, the Secret Service, the IRS, the Department of Defense, just a few people, some major financial industries, and Mayor Giuliani's Office of Emergency Management, the bunker that was designed to manage the entire city in case of an emergency, like a terrorist attack. The Securities and Exchange Commission operated the 12th and 13th floor. Does that ring a bell for anybody? 12th floor, where the worst office fires were. These guys, the SEC, lost thousands of files, hard copy paper files related to hundreds of cases that they were actively pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron and WorldCom. And so you can investigate that if you like. But I'll go on and just ask the question, do we think that Al-Qaeda could have had access to plant these explosives? And this is just an open question. This is one of the more highly defended buildings, or secure buildings outside the Twin Towers in the Pentagon, right? So, probably not. Now this is the reason that you might be hearing people running around talking about 9/11 being some sort of an inside job. Because if it wasn't Al-Qaeda, who was it? Right? We don't speculate about these things, but we welcome you to, and somebody has to get to the bottom of this. We need a real investigation, don't we? That looks at all of this evidence, which NIST did not, will not look at. So this is why the architects and engineers from 9/11 Truth erected a third beam of light in concert with the other two into the New York City skyline on 9/11. Every 9/11 anniversary, those twin beams go up by the city to commemorate the lives lost. But we believe Building 7 is the key to getting justice for those victims. So this year we'll also erect another light. Now, if I've given you something to think about, when you, I'd like you to just take a break, breathe, talk to somebody, and imagine what the implications of the information you got so far was. And when you come back, I'll invite you to sign up for our free email newsletter, and we'll look at the evidence in the Twin Towers, which unfortunately for many, they see this as even more clear, after we look at the evidence, more clear evidence for explosive demolition. So we'll look at that right when we come back in just 10 minutes. So try to be back in your seat in 10 minutes. Make sure you avail yourself of the no-host bar so we can make our expenses meet here in this wonderful facility. Thanks, we'll see you in 10 minutes. I'll just give you one example here. Robert Stern, FAIA, he's a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. He says it's gigantic dumbness, right? To get the tallest buildings in the world, you extrude 2 squares until they're 1,368 feet tall. Others call it the crowning achievement of the international style of architecture. And however you felt about it, there are some extraordinary features of this building, which I'll show you. But look at the tallest building in the world at the time, in the 60s, was still the Empire State Building. A rather glorious building in an Art Deco style and with unfolding masses. And then you compare it to the Twin Towers. You know, it's like, what's gone wrong? I've seen some buildings in Amsterdam, actually, that are uglier than these buildings. But I have never seen more beautiful buildings in the world than I've seen here in Amsterdam, too. So you have, in fact, the modern architecture here is extraordinary. You've got entire buildings that cantilever over other buildings and freeways. It's incredible what you have here. And that one with the black top and all of the little windows that appear like a little, a village organically placed and so on. What's that building called? You know what I'm talking about. It's a high-rise. It's got this incredible black cap on it with all these little weird windows. Who did that? That's incredible. I mean, you guys take risks here, at least your building owners and architects do. I assume it's a cultural phenomenon. It's extraordinary. I'm really falling in love with the Dutch people because I can communicate with you. You speak English. It's really cool. And you have big hearts also. Wonderful, wonderful. Anyway, in the 60s, though, including the Empire State Building, what you had was a forest of columns in these high-rises. Every 20 or 30 feet, every 10 meters, you have all of those columns. But the Twin Towers are quite different. They put those columns on the outside in an exoskeleton with 3 horizontal and 3 vertical in these welded prefabricated units, and then they bolted them together like an erector set around the outside, and then grouped the rest of the columns inside around the elevators. And so for the first time in history, what you have, resulted in almost solid steel at the base, about a meter by half a meter solid steel sometimes. And then between the interior core columns and the perimeter columns, we have these lighter weight trusses which span 20 meters. This is extraordinary because it gave you complete flexibility in planning the offices. Like here, 20 meters across, and then 5-10 meters across in the short distance. This was a great achievement, and the American Society of Civil Engineers called it the greatest achievement